In December of 1840, the streets of provincial France buzzed with the arrival of the postilion. Napoleon Bonaparte's ashes were finally returning from exile to a tomb in Paris. In a sparse room overlooking the river, an old veteran sat in silence, ignoring the noise of the crowd. He was a man of large, sad eyes and a right hand maimed into the shape of a claw. When a local priest arrived to ask for his memoirs, the veteran refused to speak of the past. Once the priest left, the old man dragged a trunk from beneath his bed. He ignored the official papers and reached for a cloth-bound sketchbook. He turned the pages to a drawing from June 1809, showing 6 men standing against a backdrop of the Danube. Grand national monuments tell the story of a victorious empire. These private, hand-drawn sketches preserve a different record, one of the individual trauma and the private memories of the men the history books forgot. 32 years earlier, that Viering was Gabriel, a quiet baker's assistant in the town of Agen. He spent his hours delivering pastries and his evenings hidden away with a sketchbook, capturing the local riverbank. The death of his aunt upended his quiet life. He discovered she had hidden the truth of his birth. His mother was a maid, and his father an Italian artist, who had died falling from a chapel scaffold before Gabriel was even born. Gabriel turned to his old schoolmaster, an ex-priest named Crico, for guidance. When Gabriel asked if he had the talent to be a professional painter, Crico told him that art required more than practice. It required suffering. Gabriel took the advice literally. Having been shielded from the military drafts by his aunt's money, he walked into the recruitment depot and volunteered for the Grand Army. He set out to find his artistic voice on the battlefields of Europe. He was a naive young man chasing a romantic ideal of experience, walking directly into a conflict that was systematically destroying an entire generation. In May 1809, Gabriel reached the island of Lobau in the middle of the Danube. The woods were a chaotic city of tents and campfires, where thousands of men prepared to cross the river and engage the Austrian army. Starving and exhausted after weeks of marching, Gabriel attempted to steal stew from a campfire. He was instantly tackled by a group of soldiers, and the squad's dog, a mongrel named Fouché, bit deep into his shoulder. A tall, thin sergeant named Jean Tiquet intervened. He didn't punish the recruit. Instead, he traded Gabriel a bowl of stew for a block of military salt, inducting the boy into the squad through a simple act of survival. Gabriel found himself part of a diverse micro-society: Emmanuel the acrobat, Nicholas the schoolmaster, Dominique the fiddler, Claude the idealist, and Louis the coachman. These were the 7 men of Gascony. Individual survival in the Napoleonic machine relied on these makeshift families. Within the squad, loyalty was a currency traded for shared rations, warmth, and a collective defense against the coming battle. The squad was sent into the village of Essling, taking up positions in a stone granary. They spent the day firing from the windows as the Austrian infantry attempted to storm their fortification. The battle turned into a disaster when a massive floating mill smashed the French bridge. Ammunition ran dry, and the squad was forced to charge out with bayonets into a street filled with Austrian cavalry. Separated and terrified, Gabriel hid in an abandoned cottage. He lay on the floor of a back bedroom, trying to remain motionless as the sound of the slaughter continued just outside the door. When an Austrian looter climbed through the trapdoor and began ripping the gold from Gabriel's waistcoat, the recruit's fear turned to rage. He grabbed his musket and bludgeoned the man to death. Gabriel sat on the edge of the bed in shock. He watched as a woodlouse crawled across the dusty floorboards, reached the edge of the dead man's blood, and began to drink. The romantic illusion of the artist's quest vanished in that moment. Driven by a desperate need for human contact, he fled the room, running back into the street to find the safety of his squad among the smoke and the gunfire. The French forces retreated to the safety of Lobau, but the aura of invincibility was gone. Marshal Lannes, a hero of the empire, lay mortally wounded, and the island was filled with the groans of thousands of casualties. Late that night, Napoleon himself walked through the bivouacs. He stopped at the Gascon's fire and recognized Sergeant Jean from the campaigns in Egypt, proving he knew exactly how to speak to his veterans. The emperor tossed a single gold coin to the squad's fiddler. It was a calculated, hypnotic gesture of personality that maintained his grip on men who were cold, hungry and traumatized. The absurdity of camp life continued alongside the grief. The company's old cannoneer, Carla, lay dying and demanded that her daughter, Nicolette, be married to one of the squad immediately for protection. Sergeant Sean rigged a lottery with broken straws to ensure that Claude, the man Nicolette preferred, would win the drawing and the bride. 30 years later, the veteran closed the book on these faces. The 1840 funeral procession moved through the snow in Paris, but the old man stayed in his quiet room with his memories. Gabriel found the suffering he sought, but it left him with a maimed hand and a sketchbook of ghosts. He survived to see that war is not about the grand destiny of emperors, but the bizarre, traumatized bonds forged by men trying to make it to the next morning.